G'day. Well, yes, of course, I am going to put my 2 bobs worth in, as we'd say in Australia. Going to contribute my 2 cents worth, my opinion. Because I'm a journalist, above all things, I was going to vlog on the US presidential race because of the events over the last fortnight, especially, mainly to do with Joe Biden's obvious unfitness for office because of the all too obvious rapid mental health decline. And then on the weekend, yet another sad, white, young man was shot dead by police with an AR-15 in his hand. And what makes this different to all of the other daily mass shootings, many of them involving the AR-15, which the NRA proudly described as America's rifle? What was the difference between this sad young man with an AR-15 firing into a crowd of people where they were all gathered with the intention to take out as many people as he could before, he died by self-harm via the police establishment? What made the difference was, this time, one of the people wounded in the crowd was a presidential candidate. Presidential candidate who is a convicted felon with a long history of calling for violence. And do you all remember that time that Trump urged the Second Amendment people to take care of Hillary Clinton if she got in? Well, the Second Amendment people, as it were, are now up in arms, pun intended, over someone taking a pot shot at their orange Jesus. Sadly, someone else died in the crowd, a firefighter and a dad of 2. So the Republican propaganda machine has just cranked onto this. Oh, it is truly and deeply disturbing. There are over 60 million adults in the US. 60 million people in the United States are over voting age, and somehow their politics have devolved until the only choice is between an obviously senile Biden, whose ego is bigger than his patriotism because he's broken his promise about not running in 2024. He was just going to run for the one term to get y'all out of the horrific pandemic and get the then unconvicted felon at that time only what was the term? He was an unnamed co-offender who yet to be prosecuted, was the sitting president Trump, who then, once he was defeated in the election, caused a massive insurrection, a violent insurrection where people died. People die around Trump. Everything Trump touches turns to shit because all that glitters is not gold. And the fact that he has a gold toilet should have been an indication that everything that you think is gold is actually just a receptacle of shit. But back to Biden. Biden should not be running. It is quite obvious. The best thing Biden can do for everyone is to bow out of the race, whether he has to fake his own death or whether a doctor has to tell a little white lie and tell Biden that he is too ill to continue with anything, fucking dengue fever. Tell Joe Biden that he can't continue anymore. Allow Kamala Harris, who is the vice president and a well-qualified one, the first woman of colour to be a senator, the first woman of colour to be the vice president, a prosecutor who can hold her own on the debate stage. Kamala Harris needs to be defending the presidency as the incumbent, and that way everyone who motivated themselves to get behind like Barack in 2008, 2012, they will those people, those voters will be reattracted, their interest revived in the election. They might see once again hope and change if Kamala Harris is the president contesting the presidency against a convicted felon who has been found liable of assault, who has been 6 times bankrupt, and who has now, thanks to that poor, deluded, dead young man, who, by the way, was bullied throughout high school to the point where he felt worthless. So that poor fucking very, very dead kid thought he was going to save the world. That poor fucking dead kid with the AR-15 in his hand. And how the fuck can a 20-year-old kid get an AR-15? They don't even have frontal lobes yet. That poor, sad, dead kid was bullied at school, and he probably thought the one great act that he contributes to the world in his deluded, still basically teenage mind was he thought he was going to save the world by taking out Trump, because of all the propaganda that says if Trump gets in, it's the end of democracy. It's going to be like Hitler. It's going to be like Mussolini. And they're right, because Project 2025 could have just been written by Goebbels. In fact, it practically was, because Stephen Miller, the self-hating Jewish man, is a big fan of Goebbels. Trump is a big fan of Hitler and always has been. Donald Trump's father was a card-carrying member of the KKK and was arrested at one of their rallies in the 1920s in New York. Like, they are right into the fucking Aryan nation. They think, unless you are white, straight, able-bodied, male, and a churchgoer with a very strong interest in the armaments industry, you will be a second-class citizen if Republicans win this election, because they are just going to make it, oh my God, it's going to be horrific if Trump gets in. So I can understand why a very troubled young man would have the delusion to think that he is going to be a martyr for the cause of democracy and take out Donald Trump. And there is no doubt in my mind that that young man, although Trump was a target, he wasn't going to just pop a couple of shots and get Trump and then put down his gun and go, it was me. That young man knew that he was going to be shot dead by police or by the Secret Service or by anyone near the president, ex-president, carrying a gun. He knew he was going to die. And I'm quite certain, just as they have done since Columbine, I'm sure that he wanted to take as many people with him as possible. So it wasn't just Trump. Trump was lucky. And now we come down to the crux of propaganda, don't we? The only thing that Trump is good at, his sole talent, is propaganda and the big sell. Trump has been a con man since birth. because he was brainwashed by his evil father that money is the only thing that matters, when anyone with any sort of common sense, with anyone with sort of deep faith, knows that money is the root of all evil. And if Trump is all about fucking money, he's fucking evil. But somehow, everyone else who is obsessed with building up treasures upon this earth rather than waiting for the many mansions in our Father's house, all those not in my backyard people, all that more money for me, and I'm not going to share it with anyone, despite what Christ our Saviour said. Jesus Christ fed the poor. He cared for the sick. He washed the feet of women. He threw the moneylenders out of the temple. And yet the evangelists have perverted the message of Christ to money, 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 all money for us and none for anyone else. And that's what Trump stands for. That's the only thing Trump stands for. He's their fucking golden calf. And so he knows that. Trump knows, because he's been a con man since day one, with his Trump steaks, with his Trump wine, with his Trump casinos that went bankrupt. How the fuck can you go bankrupt when you own a casino? The house always win. Like, that's spectacular, like, mismanagement. Trump, who rips off everyone. Trump, who is a con man. Trump, who has been a long recorded public history of violence and has been found liable in a civil court for assault against a woman, as well as all the contemporaneous accounts of women who have been assaulted by that vile thing for as long as since he was able to get his grubby paws out of his pram. He survived through his money being able to buy the propaganda. He used to pose as his own manager, call himself John Barron, and ring up the papers and tell them what Donald Trump has been up to, and it was all fabricated. Because the man's deluded, but he knows about propaganda. So he got his ear grazed by a bullet yesterday, and the first thing he does is thinks photo op. So he pumps a fist in the air, within a couple of hours is saying it's fucking divine intervention and God is the one who saved him. And now all those people that like send their money to televangelists and to MAGA cause online without any critical thinking, knowing that they are wrong, but too stubborn to give in and admit that Trump is not fit for presidency, all those people are now seizing upon like divine intervention, and now Trump is like saved by God to become the president. And it couldn't have happened at a worse time, of course, because Joe Biden is a shambling moron. Biden has always voted on the wrong side of history. Always. He was only ever the lesser of two evils at the 2020 election. His presidency has gone well. The economy has recovered. Unemployment is down. It's the economy, stupid. Should carry them through. Should carry them through, Democrats, and therefore, you know, keep Trump and his MAGA base at bay. And, you know, surely to Christ, Trump will be in jail or dead by the time the 2028 elections roll around. Although just prior to like having a shot taken to him, a day before, Trump announced that his younger son Barron was going to be a delegate and was more popular than like his older brothers. And so like given the corruption of the Supreme Court, you see, Trump doesn't know shit about politics. He doesn't understand a thing. He's literally just that. Yeah, he is the governor in Blazing Saddles. La 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 la. So what do I have to sign? La 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 la. That's Trump. Trump's just about the money. He's just about, like, you know, and even in Blazing Saddles, like, there's a voluptuous girl with her bikini in the governor's face, and he's like, "Hello, hello, boys." And he's looking at the boobs while he's signing something. Literally Trump. Oh no, sorry, not literally, because it's not literally, but eerily similar to Trump, shall we say. Trump, who paraded a host of weirdos and D-list celebrities through the sacred Oval Office, where democracy, Western democracy, has, you know, seen statesmen, good, bad, or indifferent, for centuries. Trump just cheapened everything, brought everything down to the level of a carnival barker, because that's all he is. He's just a front man. And Trump thought when he got into the White House the first time that he was just a Trump front man. Like, when he and his family, when they first turned up at the White House after they were elected, they thought that the staff was staying. They thought they were taking over the staff, and they just had to tell the staff what to do, or the staff would tell them what to do. They didn't understand that everyone in the White House comes with the presidency, like political appointments. So they were all leaving, and they didn't have a fucking clue. Like, I remember back in 2006, it was in the newspapers that, like, they had a cabinet meeting and they literally didn't know how to open the door with the doorknobs. They walked around, like, trying to find the right door to get out of. And they want to elect him for another term. And the reason why they want to elect him for another term is that although he seems crazy, he's at least lucid, whereas Joe Biden stood on the debate stage with his mouth open, catching flies, looking like he was stoned off his tits on cold and flu medicine, which, let's be frank, he probably was. Because, you know, someone gave Grandpa something for his cold and Grandpa couldn't handle it, obviously. So Biden should step down and let Kamala Harris contest the election, was what I was going to vlog about on the weekend, right? Like, Biden's ego is now bigger than his patriotism. And you see all these headlines like, well, Biden's family have convinced him to stay in the running and they'll support him. Yeah, ka-ching, ka-ching, ka-ching. They're not going to let that little gravy train roll away, are they? They want Biden to be remembered. It's all about their ego. They want to be remembered as, like, the two-term president. He doesn't want to be remembered as, like, Biden, who, like, you know, was the figurehead, basically, for his term while the economy got groaning again under a competent administration, and then had to bow out through age. But it's also about Trump's ego as well. But, like, Trump is now seized on the photo opportunity of, like, you know, I'm the king, I'm the chosen one. So, do you know how monarchy starts? I'll tell you how monarchy starts. Monarchy starts when a corrupt family team up with their cronies to convince a fearful and ignorant population that they have the divine right to rule. In other words, they convince everyone in a nation or everyone around them that God, whatever your interpretation of what God is, they convince everyone around them that God is speaking through them and says that and so everyone has to do what they say and give them everything, and they're entitled to it. That's what divine right of rule is. That's what King Charles over in England has, because centuries and centuries and centuries and centuries ago, before the internet, before people had literacy, before they could even study, before they could even hear the mass in English, when it was just said in Latin by priests and no one knew what was going on. Back then, that's when the monarchy started. But nowadays, we have critical thinking and freedom of information, and we are able to access like different cultures from all around the world with different philosophies, and we're able to learn from history, like 1930s Germany, so it doesn't happen again. And yet, Trump rigged SCOTUS. Trump doesn't care about the Supreme Court. Trump never cared about anything. Until Trump stood as a Republican, Trump was a huge Democrat donor because he schmoozes everyone. He was in New York and desperate to be like taken seriously as a A-lister celebrity with all the progressives, and they didn't want him because he's stupid, crass, vulgar, and a crook with a very, very nasty attitude towards women. So he's basically the sad kid on the roof with an AR-15, the bullied kid who festered a grudge against humanity because they didn't like him. But he's taking out on the rest of us by running for presidency so that he doesn't spend jail time. And this Supreme Court, which is now corrupt because he managed to put 3 political hacks in there on top of the ones that are already there. SCOTUS is now corrupt, that they overturned, so, and ideologically to the right of fascist control. They overturned Roe versus Wade and have decided now that like Trump has presidential immunity, or a president has complete immunity from criminal prosecution. So it's rather ironic that the Republicans are the ones who restored a monarchy to the Republic of the United States of America, isn't it? Because that's what they've done. They've established a monarchy, and Trump has even got his kids lined up waiting to step in. Like the MAGA cult, and it's a cult because it fits every definition of a cult. Their kids will vote for Barron if they still go through the farce of elections, that is. Now, have any of you heard of a man called John Titor? John Titor, or John Titor rather, was a man that showed up on message boards on the internet in the early 2000s. The first time he turned up was 2001. And John Titor claimed that he was a time traveller from the future. The time travel was possible. He gave all that. He was reasonably knowledgeable about technical things, about computer coding, about metaphysics and actual physics and science. He knew whereof he spake, but he said he'd come back to get supply. I think he needed to get something from IBM in order to avert something in the future. A virus or a problem in like 2038, I think. He'd come back and he disturbed the timeline by doing so. But while he was here, he wanted to warn us about some things, right? And this phenomenon of John Titor has been documented for decades, and some of his predictions have come true, although not in exactly the same time period he says, but he said that might happen. But John Titor said, well, it might not happen in the same linear fashion because I've disturbed the timeline. But one of the predictions that John Titor made was that Donald Trump will be the last president of the United States of America, and that there will be a massive civil war and unrest, and the United States will split into 4 sections, basically. Donald Trump will be the last president of the USA. And thanks to Biden's refusal to retire, Biden decided to run again in 2024 against his promise that he would not run in 2024 because of his ego and because of his stubbornness. And because of his ego and his stubbornness, the entire country isn't, and the world by extension, because the US holds the entire globe to ransom with their nukes. The whole world is in peril because Joe Biden's family want to stay in the White House instead of retiring somewhere quietly and shutting the hell up. You know who doesn't have any criminal convictions? You know who doesn't have any relatives that are like crackheads or suffering their own criminal charges? You know who hasn't got a history of violence with women? You know who's always voted on the correct side of history for 5 decades of elected public office? Bernie Sanders. It is a goddamn tragedy to the world and the universe by extension that Bernie Sanders is not coming to the end of his second successful term as president after the Democratic National Convention betrayed him, backstabbed him, put the kibosh on him to promote their corporate shill Hillary Clinton, who lost, who was always going to lose because no one likes Hillary. And I'll tell you why no one likes Hillary. No one likes Hillary because during her entire presidential election campaign, and to this day, she has her own man who has been to Epstein's Island many, many times and took advantage of interns and was accused by Juanita Broaddrick of some serious SA and has a long history of awfulness. Mr. Bill Clinton standing right there with Hillary every second of the fucking thing. You know which parallel universe I'd like to live in? While we're talking about John Titor and time travel and stuff. I would like to live in the parallel universe, possibly, where Hillary Clinton got the news about Monica Lewinsky and said, "Bro, I'm done. You can take your White House and shove it because I'm a strong, independent woman with my own political ideas and I don't need you." But instead, Hillary thought, if I don't stay with him, I might not get a chance to be as powerful and wealthy and famous. Like, the money's here, the fame's here. Bernie Sanders, still going strong, still trying to make a better world. Half of Biden's fucking administrative successes have been the design of Bernie Sanders, who should be in the White House in the first place. It is a travesty that Bernie Sanders is not finishing his second successful term as a president right now, and instead you have two old, senile, egomaniacs who do not have the best interests of the country at heart and who are being, like, wheeled out by propagandists. I mean, did you see the White House, like, the White House press secretary talking to the press about how Biden was going to give his big boy press conference to prove he was, like, cognizant of his surroundings? She couldn't even make eye contact with any of those reporters who are so far usually up her, you know, where the sun doesn't shine, like trying to please the Bidens. Could not even make eye contact. They know he's gone too far and they're still sticking with it. It is disgusting. It's disgusting on the Democratic parties, but you expect that because they knifed Bernie and put in Hillary, then lost the election, then whined. Well, would you be whining if Bernie Sanders had got in? Yeah, you would be whining when Bernie Sanders got in because Bernie would have stopped Nancy Pelosi from stock trading, all the corruption and the insider trading in Congress, people who would have thrown the moneylenders out of the temple, like Bernie Sanders, is too much of a threat to them. So they go for the corporate shills like Biden and the corporate shills like Trump, who has only ever been good at putting his face in the front of a camera and selling things, but not understanding anything of what he's selling, other than give me the money, and I want to like be introduced to that beauty queen. A corrupt Republican Party has put forward an unfit candidate once again, and a corrupt Democratic Party has put forward an unfit candidate once again, and now you've got civil war breaking out because their lack of gun safety legislation has allowed a potential mass shooting to occur at an election rally, at a campaign rally for Trump. And the propaganda around Trump being saved by God. Oh. Why is it when people go, oh, my prayers were answered, thank God Jesus brought home my missing dog? Do they really think that like God is punishing all those people whose dogs didn't come home even though they prayed as well? When people survive a mass shooting and goes, thanks be to Jesus that I survived, do you think Jesus is looking at like the people, like the children who die and go, you deserve that? No! The creator of the universe is ostensibly omniscient, omnipresent, and a loving God who knows everyone's heart. If that is the case, I don't think he's rooting for the guys that make AR-15s for money and then give some of that money to Republican senators to make sure they can keep making the money. Pretty sure he's not on their side. So Trump got grazed and used it as a photo op and is using it as proof that he is the chosen one. And the fact that the Secret Service failed miserably, and the fact that it's a Secret Service under the Biden administration is only going to add fuel to the fire of Republican and MAGA propaganda. Like, Trump gets by brainwashing MAGA people that, like, they're out to get me, they're out to get me. And fucking, like, the Secret Service nearly let someone blow his head off. Like, if he hadn't moved his head at that split second, we would have seen him assassinated. No one deserves that. No one deserves to be assassinated. No one deserves to have their life cut short by another human being. But access to AR-15s makes it all too easy for people who are unwell or evil to take their begrudgement and their hurt out on society at large. The Constitution of the US says that everyone has the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. AR-15s are an anathema to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Because you cannot pursue happiness living your life in a gun-free household if you live with the knowledge that there is like someone flying an American flag upside down who was at the January 6th insurrection screaming for the vice president to be hanged, and you know they've got a stockpile of assault weapons. It is impossible to be happy under those circumstances. Certainly not liberty. So the ancient Chinese curse of may you live in interesting times is upon us. These are interesting times indeed. As I said, 60 million adults of voting age in the US, and the best they have to offer is two old, white, corporate shills whose egos are too large to allow them to resign with dignity and let someone competent have a go. But one thing has not changed since the assassination attempt and attempted mass shooting by that sad, dead, white kid. Donald Trump is still a convicted felon. He is still closely associated with the Heritage Foundation's Project 2025, which will take away human rights for the general population of the United States and will only make things oppressed and impoverished, even worse than they already are. So, for God's sake, and I do mean for the sake of God, America, I hope you all come to your senses, motivate yourselves, and vote blue, no matter who is on the ticket. Because let's face it, although Biden is incompetent and shouldn't be there, he's probably going to make it to the election. So just, pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. Just vote blue, because nothing has changed since before and after the attempted shooting of Donald Trump, other than one poor, sad, dead kid killed another human being who was a father and a firefighter in that crowd and wounded others. But it didn't change who Donald Trump was. And Donald Trump does not deserve to be president. And none of the people around Donald Trump deserve to be in elected office or in public life anywhere. They deserve to be in jail. All right. Here endeth the lesson. Happy Monday. Hope you enjoyed my political vlog. I have not been reading your comments, but I thank everyone who's been watching. Thank you everyone who likes, shares and subscribes. I particularly enjoyed the comments by people who listen to what I have to say. It's always nice to know that people can admire brains and conversation and not just my outfits. I'll see you when you got nothing on.